Hey, it's Thomas with PuraTHRIVE, and we have a sugar problem in this world. The fact is, 14% of our daily energy is coming from sugar. And there's some ways that you can combat it. You just need to know how sugar works in the body, you need to know how a withdrawal works, and you also need to know the process and the steps that you can take to start weaning yourself off of sugar properly. I want to help you understand what you can do to help expedite the detoxification process from sugar. Because although some people will tell you that you can't detox from sugar, the fact is your body has a natural detoxification process when it comes down to coming off of sugar. But before I do that, I have to give you an understanding of what's actually happening in the body. Because most people think sugar's just bad because it's a carbohydrate. No, carbohydrates aren't bad. This is way beyond that. You see, we have a specific area of our brain. It's called the nucleus accumbens. Okay, this nucleus accumbens actually receives the sugar and produces dopamine. Have you ever heard of dopamine before? What dopamine is the neurotransmitter that is related to our pleasure and our reward senses. So when someone compliments you, or when you do something that feels good, you have a surge of dopamine. It helps you feel like you accomplished something. Now, on that same note, it's the same kind of thing that happens when you do a recreational drug. Okay, for instance, a drug that's going to trigger your dopamine receptors is going to make you feel really good. It's going to make you feel very elated and energetic. And that's exactly why you get addicted to it, because you get addicted to that feeling. But believe it or not, sugar acts on the exact same portion of the brain and has the same dopaminergic response as a lot of different various drugs do. You see, what it does is it ends up down-regulating that portion of your brain. So it down-regulates dopamine production. So you know how if you were to drink, say, alcohol, and you were to get accustomed to it, you would need more and more and more in order to ultimately have the same desired outcome. The same thing happens with sugar. A lot of times we just don't realize it. We hear about blood sugar rises and falls, but what really matters is how it's affecting our brain, how it's affecting how we feel. So when we have a downregulation of dopamine, it means that we need a lot more to get the same feel-good effect that we get from sugar that we subconsciously feel. Okay, so what it does is it actually increases the amount of D1 receptors, dopamine 1 receptors, and decreases the amount of dopamine 2 receptors. So what this means is the brain actually changes. The genetic structure of the midbrain changes to allow more sugar, to allow more potential dopamine, but the D2 receptors make it so that we actually don't produce more dopamine. So our brain changes to accept more, but produce less. And it also decreases dopamine transporters. These dopamine transporters pick up dopamine that hasn't been used and recycle it back to the midbrain in order to be used again so that we're never wasting dopamine. The best analogy that I can give you is like recycling. It's recycling dopamine. But in this case, the recycling man doesn't come and pick up the garbage. So it's like you recycle all these boxes, you recycle all this plastic, you put it in the bin, you put it on the side of the street, and then the garbage man never comes and picks up your recycling. So it just builds and builds and builds and builds. You're not actually having the recycling of the dopamine that you would ordinarily want. So we have to understand, how can we combat sugar withdrawal knowing this? Well, believe it or not, it comes down to two pretty simple things. And I've come up with this formula over time, and it helps people understand exactly what they can do to start weaning themselves off of sugar a little bit more. The first one is to dramatically increase your probiotic-rich foods. This isn't something that you want to do permanently, because if you have too much in the way of probiotics, you can actually cause a negative effect. You can have this fermentation that occurs in your gut. But while you are detoxing from sugar, it's good to go overboard on the probiotic foods. Sauerkraut, kimchi, cabbage, things like that. Even consuming probiotic tablets if you want to. It's really important to get that in the mix. Why? Because it helps you metabolize and literally digest the excess sugar that isn't going to be literally used for energy right at that very point in time. So not only can it help you potentially gain less fat from that excess sugar, it's going to help metabolize it. So yes, you will feel bloated. Okay? During a withdrawal, you're going to feel bloated because that sugar is going to get consumed by the bacteria, and it's going to cause you to bloat, and it's going to give you a lot of gas. But it's going to decrease your withdrawal symptoms by quite a bit, and it's going to decrease the time that it takes to withdraw. Okay, the other thing that you want to do is you want to fiber load. Okay, I'm not saying this is a digestive process that's going to feel great. When you load up on a lot of fiber, you're going to feel constipated, you're going to feel bloated, and you're going to feel pretty miserable. But what it's going to do is it's going to temporarily still give your body that dopaminergic response from a carbohydrate, but you're not going to have the blood sugar rise and falls. So while you're coming off of sugar, the fiber is going to help you significantly. I really think you only have to do this for about 14 days before you can really start feeling the effects and come off the sugar without having nearly as much in the way of a withdrawal symptom. Last but not least, we know that sugar elicits a strong inflammation response in the body. So if we start modulating inflammation, we can start controlling how that sugar responds in our body. So what I would recommend is using something that we know is anti-inflammatory, something like curcumin. But you have to make sure you get it in an absorbable form. So if you click on the link, I'll explain a little bit more about how PuraTHRIVE's liposomal micellar turmeric gets into your body so you can leverage the power of curcumin to help negate the inflammatory response of sugar in your body. I'll see you there.